Hello, I'm Jeff Cavins, and today we're looking at the scriptures for the seventh Sunday in Ordinary Time. Love your enemy. In the course of everyday living, we're apt to run into people who differ from ourselves, whether it's their political opinions or philosophic opinions or their religious opinions. We find ourselves on the opposite pole of other people. We could say in some ways they are our enemies. Maybe they said something about us, maybe they gossiped about us, or we caught an email where they undermined us and our reputation in some way. Well, we think of them as our enemies. So the question in today's readings really is, what is our attitude towards those who oppose us philosophically, politically, religiously, whatever it might be? And the answer is really three things that our readings give us today. One is from the Old Testament in Leviticus chapter 19. We're told to, even in the Old Testament, love our neighbors as ourselves and love those who oppose us even as ourselves. But I think that the real key here that Jesus brings out in the New Testament in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5 is that we are to pray for our enemies. Let me read from the Gospel, chapter 5, Matthew. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust." So what is our attitude towards those who oppose us? Well, I suppose we could just confront them in anger and tell them they are wrong and we are right. We could send out an email blast to our whole list telling everybody really what happened. Or we could undermine their reputation behind the scenes. But that's not what we're called to do. We're called to be like Jesus, who says, pray for your enemy. In other words, we're called to be sons. We're called to be daughters. You know that you might be the key to the person that you consider an enemy. You might be the key to them coming to Jesus Christ. Love overcomes. And if we spend our time fighting our own battles and defending our own reputations rather than loving those who oppose us, then we're not going to win the world. Jesus hung on the cross for those who despise the cross. He defeated hate. He defeated sin. He defeated evil by loving and praying for his enemies. Even on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing." When we are opposed by other people, enemies, we could say that it's our cross. And as we endure that cross, we must do the same thing that Jesus did, and that is love. I also like what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. He talks about the fact that our bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit. Well, what does that have to do with praying for those who persecute you and praying for those who hate you, praying for your enemies? I would suggest this. The temple in the Old Testament was the place where the very presence of God dwelt. 3 times a year, they made pilgrimages to the temple. They wanted to be in the presence of God. Because when they were in the presence of God, it's where they received the blessing. It's where they received forgiveness. It's where they received reconciliation. And if our bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit, it means that our lives can be the place where people congregate, the place where people come to find reconciliation, to find that love that they're really looking for. You know, a number of years ago, my mentor, Bishop Paul Dudley, a saint, a walking saint, was accused by someone who was opposing him of inappropriate behavior. Now, anyone that knows Bishop Paul Dudley knows that that didn't happen. I saw it on the news and I immediately called him and I said, "Bishop," after he said hello, I said, "Bishop, I just want you to know I love you and you are such an example to me." And he said, "Jeff," he said, "do me a favor. Pray for this individual. Pray for him. Pray that God would touch his heart." And for the next 9 months, Bishop Dudley was checked out by the archdiocese and he was found innocent, as everybody knew. But it was 9 months of enduring, 9 months of speaking well of his enemy, 9 months of praying for his enemy. He became an example to all of us in the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis of what Jesus is talking about today. You will never win your enemy's heart by fighting with the world's way of fighting. We must pick up the weapons that Jesus has given us and walk in faith, walk in mercy, and walk in love. Love your enemies as yourself. Pray for those who persecute you. And remember that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is constantly drawing people to Jesus. Your assignment this week? Think about those that you would consider enemies in your life, and make a point every day this week to spend just a few minutes praying for them. Don't pray that they would make the situation right with you, but pray for their soul that they would be right with God and they would find what they're truly looking for. God bless you.